It's part 14 of Project PAHOOT. There's lots of talk of big boy pants in this one. I do like to talk about my big boy pants, but I've done a lot of cutting and a lot of maths and a lot of measuring and a lot of working out where things are going to go, and I've done a bit of talking to other people who own scimitars and got some dimensions off them which are going to be extremely helpful in fitting the rear end that you saw in the previous episode. But we're quite far along, not as far as I'd like to be, but it's getting there. So I would say grab a cup of tea, maybe even a bourbon or a chocolate digestive, whatever tea you fancy, and just watch me talk into the camera and tell you what I've done. It's the same as every time, isn't it, really? Enjoy. Operation Fitter 1 series underneath the back of the Scimitar has well and truly begun. So I've stripped dampers off because they're probably a bit tall and they're going to get in the way, and I've grabbed the body and the axle set up, and I've done this. So it's roughly central, you can sort of see everything under there. That whole assembly is going to go up some more because it's sat now with no springs on it, so it's not at full droop. So these boxes here, both sides, they're going to have to go to allow me to put the framework in. But it just, if you look where the wheel's central there, you probably can't see in there, but the little hump on the front of the subframe just clears the bowls that the rear seats sit in. I mean, it's a reasonably wider, but not massively so. And these are not the wheels I'm going to be using, these are just placeholders. These are 16-inch alloys, but they're only 6.5 inch wide. The wheels I'm going to be using are Steelies, because Steelies are cool as fuck, and everyone loves Steelies. Also BMW wheels, also offer 1 series, but these bad boys here, 4 of them, get some 225/50s on them. They're 16 inch as well, by the way. 225/50s on, paint them a nice grey colour like a gunmetal, and they will look the dog's danglies then. So now I'm happy that I don't have to widen the car too much. Some subtle flares on the wheel arches, or maybe bring these out a little bit. I mean, that's a good 50-60 mil. The main thing I wanted to see where it would go, and what I'm going to have to do with my dampers. I'm probably going to reuse the Scimitar dampers if I can get everything to line up once I've got to the chassis side. But yeah, I know it's going to fit, so it's going to have to go higher up than that there. That's going to be dragging on the floor, but that whole setup is probably going to be another few inches up above that. But the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to drag the axle back in, take everything off it, and start on making the adaptations to get it onto the chassis. Well, I'm going to adapt the chassis to fit the subframe, not adapt the subframe to fit the chassis, if you know what I mean. Subframe, if I leave that as is, geometry doesn't change, everything's perfect, I don't have to worry. So that's going to be the next job, take the body back off, put the body away, and start working on bring the axle back in here and start making the framework up. Job's a good one. This is where we're up to with creating a framework. Getting attacked by a wasp here. So I've made a note of basically the centre of the holes, these two here. The same at the front as well. So basically I'm going to drill broach drill these from either side, or probably get this into a pillar drill and drill a 6mm pilot hole right the way through, and then get the broach drill on from both sides so everything ends up in the centre. And then those are the two main mounting points. I can then work out where they need to go on the chassis, where I need to cut the chassis, or where I need to add other stuff in. But I need access to a pillar drill first, so I need to find someone with a pillar drill, because I've got one here that doesn't work. And I don't want to go through it with the rotor broach, because it only goes through 20mm depth, and that's 50mm steel, so it's not going to go through it. So I'm going to take the discs and calipers off for the time being, just to take a bit of weight out of it, give everything a bit of a clean up, because those axle ends are really crusty, and it's probably going to want new discs anyway. Pads don't look too bad, but I'm probably going to take all of this stuff off anyway, just to refurbish any rubbers, or everything feels pretty solid anyway. But I'll replace what's needed. I've got some bushes for these here. I've got some in the I bought some for my 3 Series ages ago and never needed them. Hell, that's a flimsy anti-roll bar, but it's more anti-roll bar than it had. So I'll get these box section bits out of the way. That's a bloody good box section as well. That's 4mm wall, that is. I think the rest of the car will bend before that does. So I might be over engineering it here. But yeah, I'll get them holes drilled, and I'll get some M16 bolts bought so I can bolt it all together. So yeah, I'll just bolt through from underneath, through here, put a crush tube inside, and then I'll probably weld a captive nut on top here, depending on how far outboard. I think the chassis rails will sit somewhere around here, so if you can reach up inside the wheel arch and grab hold of a bolt, I'll probably just leave it as a bolt. But welding it on and making it captive probably makes more sense, really, because then you only have to undo it from underneath, no messing about. Right, let's get some bits taken off. Right, so I've made a bit of progress with the rear subframe. I put my big boy pants on and I drilled all the holes, rotor broached all the holes for the steel work. So now we have this, and I'm pretty happy because this rear one fitted absolutely spot on, chef's kiss, and this one was probably about 1mm out, but it's got rubber bushings in, so it's not really much of an issue. It's as square and as straight as I can get it using a hand drill and a rotor broach on the floor, but it's at a point where it can be test fitted against the chassis once I've cut all the bits off the chassis. So this is these will be captive when it's finished, because I'm not going to be able to get on top of these, so I'm going to weld these on here, and I'm going to put crush tubes in there. They're not there for the moment because I've not made them. So again, that one's going to have crush tubes in, which I've got to get made up, and I'll probably slice this off somewhere around there, put a crush tube in. But none of that should interfere with any of the suspension work, and it looks pretty stable. I mean, it's not tightened up, so you know, these will go down a bit more. You'll get more thread engagement on them. So it's just a case of making sure where it sits on the chassis this way. I'm going to have to cut out of the chassis at the front to clear this section here. So there's going to be a bit of bracing to be done to stop the chassis from deforming when I cut that out and cut all the stuff off the back. And then once this is sort of 100% where it needs to be, I can tack it in place and then get a proper welder to do the work for me. But in the meantime, we actually have some useful dimensions. So I want to say a big thanks to Dave Edge from the Facebook Scimitar Owners Club, who has a full CAD model of a Scimitar SE5A chassis, and he very kindly gave me some pictures and videos from his CAD model to show me the dimensions that I need. So looking at this now, I have a dimension from the centre of this outrigger to the centre of the axle, and I also have a dimension from here down to the centre of the axle. Now that's for a Scimitar SE5A at full droop, which is what I need. That's going to be my base point. The only other dimension I now need is going to be the difference between the centre of the output flange here and the centre of the axle here. Because it's an independent system, the diff stays where it is and the axles obviously drop down, so there'll be a height differential at full droop, and once I know that height differential, I can subtract that from this distance here, and that tells me where my diff needs to be, and it should also then lead me on to where my shaft can come out. And then I need to look into the voodoo and science of driveline angles, because obviously you don't want it perfectly straight because of vibrations, but you don't want too much angle because it'll shake itself to bits. But I will probably use an online calculator for that and go from there. But overall I'm pretty happy. I've got that bit done, so now I've got to make sure I've got enough cutting discs and grinding discs and start chopping bits of the chassis out, and this is when all the big work starts happening. Once that's done and this is on, then once I know my driveline position height wise and I know my driveline angles, I then know where the gearbox is going to sit in space, and then I'm going to have to get on with getting the gearbox, get the bell housing cut and the other bell housing matched up to it. Sorry, I'm trying to brush up at the same time here. I'm about to leave. But it's an ongoing process, and this is a big part of the process. It's just been done. I'm really happy that all my drilling worked out. I took my time. I measured everything twice, cut everything once, and it's all worked out right. So there's enough give in all the bushes and everything for it to be central and still be fully adjustable. So I didn't actually realise on these you've got camber adjustment as well. You've got camber and toe adjustment, so I've got plenty of scope for taking out that millimetre or two that it may well be out. I could do that once everything's on and finally adjusted and it actually goes to have an alignment done. But that's a job for another day. So next job is going to be, I'm going to chop the chassis, and hopefully I'll have charged my other phone up so I can actually record myself doing that, because I didn't do this today. Didn't charge my phone up, but that's what happens when you do things in a rush. But we live to fight another day. Onwards. One of Operation Chop huge big bits off the chassis has begun and has been successful. This piece is no longer here now. Ooh, see, it's there, that side. This one came off quite nicely. It's a nice little slit across here, and chopped through that, chopped that off there. I'll tidy that up afterwards. It was just that piece there, but just got this one to go. I've made a start on it, and I made a little grind there. I've not filmed myself doing it because you don't really need to see me grinding stuff. Yeah, we haven't got ear defenders on this time. I've got no goggles, but ear defenders. But yeah, get the rest of this off, and then excuse me, got a mouthful of sparks. Make a start on chopping these out here and there, and yes, I do need them out. Sorry, yes, they're going to have to go off to there, and then I've got to work out where here I need to cut. But before that gets cut, we're going to make some sort of brace from here down to there. I'll just weld a chunk of steel in just to stop this falling over as soon as I take any strength out of it. And then we can offer up the axle. I still need to get my full droop centre axle height for the F20 axle. I've got everything else, but I'm still waiting to go and see this 1 series across the road. Or worst case scenario, I'll bring my 3 series in here and I'll just measure it off that, because they're all give or take roughly the same, and I'm going to be lowering it anyway, so I'm going to want the axle centre to be higher than what the original one was. But I'll get some more bits cut off and then we'll see what it looks like without them. It's fun. Well, I've cut everything off, well, mostly everything. That's the remainder, or the offcuts, not the remainder. So we're all clear now at the back here, so I've got no issues with where the back of the subframe is going to sit. I've cut these cross members off here, everything's off here. These bolts are seized in very tight. I'm not too worried about them for the time being, because that section is likely to be cut anyway. I think this is going to end up being cut somewhere down here, parallel to this, probably at about 40-50 mil. So I'm going to leave them on, and when I cut all this off here, or cut enough off, probably like maybe like that, or maybe even straight up, because I'm thinking all I'll do is I'll just box the back section in, leave all this welded together, and I don't have to do any strengthening or bracing from there to there, unless it looks like it's going to fall apart whilst I'm doing it. But we'll see when that time comes. But to do that, I need the measurement for the I need to know oh man, my brain's not working. Before I can do any of that, I need to know my diff height and my axle height difference, so I can work out how high up here the subframe is going to sit. I'm hoping I can notch this and drop the subframe into it so this stays flush here. Otherwise, I have to start cutting holes out of the body into the rear seats, and then I have no rear seats, which I don't really want to do. But these things happen. I'm keeping these for the time being, because as luck would have it, the distance between these two is, give or take, about the same as the width of the front part of the subframe crossmember that I've made. So I might be able to sort of tie in from here to there to add some extra strength in once the subframe is in here. If not, I can just cut these off and then triangulate across, or like that to here, you know, here to there, whatever. But I think I'm going to go and grab the subframe and offer it up, and just put the front piece, just lay it on here, roughly where it needs to go, and then I can work out how far back, or how far, excuse me, got to stop eating sparks, how far along here that the cross member needs to sit to bring the diff to exactly where my measurement is, which is I think about 600 mil from here to axle centre, which puts it about here roughly. I did measure it a minute ago, but I think it's 632 mil from the centre of this. So looking at that, that's about 65 mil, so 32.5 mil. So I would say 600 mil to the centre. And bear in mind that the Scimitar axle, because it was a live axle, even though it had parallel arms here, doesn't move perfectly straight when it goes. It moves ever so slightly in an arc. So your distance at full droop from here to there is different from when it's higher up its travel. Whereas with this now being an independent, the travel is perpendicular all the time and makes no difference. So as long as my wheel centre is within at least a couple of millimetres, you're not going to notice anyway. Plus the arch is going to be widened, so I can always, if it does turn out that the wheelbase, I've shortened it or lengthened it by 5 mil because I've got something way off, I can just alter the arch to make it fit. So I'm going to go and grab the subframe and sort of half hang it in place and suspend it somehow at the back here, and we'll see what it looks like. I think I'm probably going to have to put the diff back in it as well. I've just realised that, because I need the diff in to know where the centre of the diff is once the subframe's in. But I might be able to measure it. I'll get my tape measure out, but I'm going to go and grab the subframe now and have a look, see what it looks like. Progress. We love it. It's not pretty, but it's roughly in place. But as you can see, we need to go at least this far forward. From what I remember when I did my first measurements, I'm pretty sure that this is going to end up about here. So, to enable the whole subframe to go forwards by, what, 120 mil, I should be able to work out how much of this to cut out to clear this hump of the subframe here. So it's not level, as you can see. It's all kinds of odd bits, but it's roughly where it needs to be height wise in terms of these touching. So what I'm going to do next time round is fit the diff back in just loosely, so I know where that sits in space, somewhere here. I mean, looking at that now, and that's going to go up another 40 mil anyway. Further forward, the diff sits somewhere here, so, and our full droop is pretty much bang on where that is, because at full droop normally these little sections here would have come across here, the axle would have sat on them, so we're not going to be a million miles away at that, I don't think. And looking here, that spring mounting isn't going to work. I don't think even going forward 120 mil, that's only going to end up being about here. It may work, if not I'll probably just cut them off and move them to where they need to be, assuming the spring length and the damper length from the Scimitar will work. I'm not expecting it to, but if it does, it'll be lovely. So yeah, refit the diff, and then I can work out how much of this to cut out, shift this forward, get this in space where it needs to be height wise, and then start notching the chassis to drop it into place. But that's going to involve lasers and lots of calculations and measurements, because it's got to be in the right place, and get it tacked in so everything's square, plumb, true, level, and then get it properly welded up by a proper welder, because I'm not a proper welder, but luckily I know people who are. So that's not going to be happening anytime soon, so I'm just going to crack on, make it look a bit better, get me measurements, get me cutting done, and then we'll go from there. But happy days, it looks sort of like it should be there, sort of. I put my big boy pants on and I cut a rather hefty chunk of chassis off. So this was there and now it isn't. So this gap here now should give me the clearance I need to get that into where it needs to be. So I've just got to do the same on the other side, and then I'm going to reattach the diff into here so that I know where from this point the center line is, because I already know the distance to here, or to the center of there, to the center of the diff. I know that. Once I know where it is on the cradle, I can make some sort of a mount here. I'm probably going to make it out of timber, something that just hangs over here, butts up against this, and has a hole at the exact center. And then the idea is that I run a piece of 20mm tube or something that just slots into there and comes out and fits through the hole in my template. And when I've got the diff at that height, I can slot the tube in. I know that everything's at the right height and right position, and then I can start mocking up or clamping up the subframe into position and work out where I need to make my mounts. So I'm going to chop the other piece of that off now, tidy it all up, and I'm going to try the framework in place without the diff in the cradle, then put the diff in the cradle and then see where we go. And then cry when I realise I'll probably have to cut big chunks out of the bodywork. But I'm trying to avoid that, we'll see. Right, let's crack on. Right, I've got the diff back in the subframe, and it's now pretty much in its final resting place, give or take a few millimetres here and there. So it's at its correct height. If I can just work this out here, if I set that to 160 from there, that's give or take centre of the axle, maybe a little bit higher, which means the car will be lower, which is good. It has, because of where it is, because of how close it is to where I've cut it here, it's actually a bit further back, so the wheelbase is about, excuse me, let me just get in here and have a look. It's going to be about 50 mil longer. So the measurements that I got, which are from that tube to the centre of the axle on the original Scimitar, was 600 mil, and we are at about 650. So my wheelbase is 50 mil longer. Not the end of the world, because the arches are getting cut and widened anyway, so I can just cut them off and move them back, move them back a little bit. So I'm kind of roughly happy with where it is. It's roughly square, it's not fully square. We're about 135 to the middle of each of the bolts on those sides. My distance from here to the top tube is about 340. It's hard. It's get really strange perspective on the phone, but it's not far off square. Obviously, it's only clamped in place at the moment and on some wood. But the idea being is that once I know exactly where it's going and it's square, I'm just going to tack it here for the time being. It's going to have to be fixed to here in the long run, but we're going to have to beef up this section, because that 90-degree section is not going to be strong enough to carry any of the forces going through it, so it's going to have a box section piece along there. So from there to there, or possibly right through. I may even just completely redo this top piece of the chassis from there all the way to the end, just do a completely new piece, and then this can be welded onto it. I'm unsure about whether this piece is going to run through, because the fuel tank's got to sit here, and I'm already going to have to cut the fuel tank down, because the fuel tank ordinarily came to about here, but obviously I've got a big chunk of subframe in the way now, so I'm going to have to cut, a big chunk of fuel tank out. So I'm going to lose literage. It's not the end of the world. Or we just make a newer tank that's deeper and goes here, but I'll get to that in the long run. But I mean, keeping this bar all the way across would make it stronger. The other option is, so once I've boxed in here, cut them off here and gusset here, and obviously these ends are going to be cut off anyway, they're surplus to requirements. But once I've got my position right, I'm going to bring my sight laser in. It's like a little 6-way laser, so I should be able to get a good idea of where my position is, and I can line it up and make a mark on the chassis and make a mark on this. I can get this dead on centre. The front here we are going to have to, I think, go from here to there. So this piece won't be there, it's just sat there for the moment. I can't have this going through here because anything from here upwards is the seat tub. So all this section here is all seat tub. Anything from here across, so anything this side, anything to the right of this ruler here is in the wheel arch aperture. So that's gonna, this piece here will be in the wheel arch. We might just, this bit here might just end up encroaching into the seat base. And I think we should just get away with this mount here. The only thing that does concern me is once this piece is in and bolted across to here, am I going to be able to get the bolt in? But I think I can bolt from this side and put the nut there. I've done a brief test fit of the anti-roll bar. The anti-roll bar fits in, but it will have to be fitted onto the subframe before the subframe goes in. So if I ever need to change the bushes, I'm going to have to lower the subframe. But the bushes look to be pretty good anyway. They're in reasonably good nick. There's no cracking or anything on them. They're reasonably new. But I also have some in the workshop that I bought for me E90 and never needed. So I'm kind of happy where I'm up to now. I know it's going to fit. So I can get the positioning right, start fabricating up things that come from a piece from here to there, and then probably triangulate down to there. And obviously these are on here, these will be welded to that and then triangulated and gusseted up. And I've not really, I did think maybe about joining these two over here, but I'm going to have to mount all the arms and everything to see where it would interfere, if it would interfere in the swing of the arms. And I'm going to have to move the shock mounts because I think the shock mounts on the wishbones are about here, so shock mount probably go here and then, but that's a bit further down the road. So that's going to do for now. I'm not going to do any more to it for the moment until I'm happy with where this is. So that's going to be it for this episode. I've done enough of it. I've got the big stuff done, I've done all the cutting, and I got my positioning 95% there. So the other thing I did notice as well is with this is level to the eye. The diff actually points upwards a little bit, so I'm assuming on the 3 Series that the drive line comes downwards. So looking at where the yoke is at, it's at a good height. So it's probably going to line up perfectly here. It probably is going to travel downhill ever so slightly anyway to there, so I'm not too worried about that. You want some angle in there anyway. That's another thing I've got to get into working out what my driveline angles need to be to prevent judderage. But I'm not worrying about that right now. I'm doing one thing at a time, and this thing is getting this back end in. So, yep, I'm going to call it a day at that, and then regroup with my laser, clean things up, start welding, fabricate up my pieces. The idea being, I'm hoping I can make the pieces so that they are symmetrical, so I can, once I've got it square and level, measure it up on one side, work out what that piece is going to be, and just make 2 of them. Same here, you know, make gussets identical both sides, and then I'm not messing around. And then we'll just see how it goes, and then we can try mounting all the arms and drive shafts and everything on, and then see how it sits. Maybe drop the back end down on the floor with some wheels on, but that's for another episode, not this one. So I'll see you in a bit.